for April 9th. Appreciate everyone who came out. We'll go ahead and move into the agenda. We do have a quorum. Phyllis has indicated we do. And so we'll go ahead and turn the meeting over to Bev for her report on investments.
There's a couple things here before I get in. We have new reporting this month, but there's a couple things that I've also included in your packet. One thing is an investment policy. I wanted you guys to have time to look it over and read it, and then we'll put it on the agenda for next month to adopt it and for the board to vote on it. So I wanted to give it to you so you have time to look it over and read it. The next thing I had was we have that great big safe in the treasurer's office. It's all concrete, it's not fireproof or anything, so we don't keep anything of any major value at the storage, basically closet that we put in there. We keep anything of value in fireproof safes and stuff. But we currently pay an annual invoice to Diebold here, and I put the invoice there for you guys to see. I mean, it's $215 a year, and it's a maintenance agreement. What they do is once a year they come in, they clean the lock, and they make sure it works. We never close it. The combination is very long and lengthy. The last time it was locked, it took us like a day and a half to even get it open. So we never close it, we never lock it. So I didn't know what your opinions were, if you think we need to keep this maintenance agreement up. And I know it's kind of building maintenance stage, so I don't know. I'd just like to have everybody's thoughts. I would like to see it deactivated so nobody could get locked in it or anything like that, would be my opinion, since nothing of value comes.
So deactivated?
Yeah, just kind of, I don't know, a locksmith to come in so nobody could get locked in there or anything like that. But that's just kind of my opinion, and the invoice is here to be paid, but I wanted to see what everybody else thought.
Bev, do we need the storage? Do we need what the vault provides for storage?
Well, yeah, we store like 5 years of our financials and stuff in there, boxes, storage boxes, but nothing of cash or anything that needs to be put in fireproof. It's just concrete, it's not fireproof. We do not lock it. It does have a gate on the inside that we can lock with a key, so if we do need to lock it, we still can lock the inside door. So this is just basically the big door, the big vault door that they maintenance.
So is your recommendation that we maintain the vault or deactivate it? What is your recommendation?
I think it's more of a liability if somebody would get locked in there. I mean, I know that there's not a lot of people rummaging around back there, but, you know, if we're gonna keep it, we probably should keep it so it will open, you know. And that would probably be wise then to keep the maintenance agreement. If we want to basically keep it non-functionable, then we wouldn't need to pay a maintenance agreement every year.
Well, if we had it just set where you could just shut it and latch it, but not lock it, that would be better function anyway, more functional, wouldn't it? You can still use storage and you've got the key lock.
Well, we're using it for storage right now.
So we wouldn't have to have an agreement, you know, our maintenance agreement if we just use it as storage.
That's my point,
yeah.
Yeah, we're just using it for storage right now.
So can the same company, could they do that, deactivate it? Or?
I would have to check into that, or maybe a locksmith or something like that, but it's old, so we'd have to find somebody that.
If we're not putting anything of value in it and it's not fireproof and it's just basically storage, we're spending $250 a year for storage.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'd like to make a motion that we deactivate it.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, thanks.
Deb, did you want to touch on investments for a second?
Yeah, there's several different reports here that you'll see that are different. I'll just touch on them real quickly. The first one you'll see is your monthly fund balances that you're basically used to looking at. These balances are month-end period 4. They'll be from like the end of the month instead of today's date. So you'll see a monthly end of the month March balance. You'll see the claims that are going to be paid out. And the third column is what is a March monthly expense. This is more of an accurate expense of a monthly expense than the claims are. So what those will include is everything. They will include payroll, they will include all the claims that were paid out and the manual checks. So it gives a more true to month expense on that report.
Yeah, what did you say the first column is?
The first column is the checking account balances as of the month end of March.
Month of March?
The month of March. And then the second column is the claims to be paid on 4/15. And then there, something that I really liked is there's a general fund cash flow behind this one. It's got revenue in front and expenses second, and then it gives a surplus at the bottom. And this is done monthly. So this would be a March cash flow for the general fund. And then, of course, you'll have your monthly investment balances. Right now, I have 2 columns on this report because I was looking into a 12-month CD. I'm not getting very good interest rates from any local banks, not any better than I'm getting on the 30-day CD, so why tie it up at this point? But I am going to leave that column on there just in case we would run into it. All right. And then there, behind here is a budget to actual. Basically, the bottom totals are something maybe to look at. For instance, we're in period 4, so we should be, 33%, so we should have around 67% remaining expenditures and revenues. So that's kind of something for you to look at every month to see how we're panning out there. And the last page is our collector balances, which were not included in the monthly checking balances before. So as we collect property taxes, you'll see those go up and what we have in there, and you'll see the disbursements we have.
So how is the year end coming with Bondstack closing down the 2014? And which then would lead to my second question, the audited report from Carpenter, Mitchell, and Goddard. So where do we stand with
They're still working on, they're getting ready for Carpenter and Mitchell, and they're still working with Carpenter and Mitchell and getting the things that they need. They still have like, they got some projects that they are still reviewing that they need to get into looking at, and so.
That would be Sarah's group or internal
Yes,
auditors?
Sarah's group, right,
Okay.
right. The last she spoke of, she thought that they were still looking at maybe around the 1st of May. Have you heard anything different? They're shooting for that.
Yeah, that's what they're shooting for.
The 1st of May to have the internal done for the year?
Yes, and then have everything ready for Carpenter and Mitchell.
And I've already sent some things to the regular auditors, so they've got some things that they're working on.
Yeah, they're working behind the scenes right now too, but
Yeah.
Sarah's kind of working up on the scenes.
normally, once the carpenter gets the gutter gets involved, about 30 days before we get the interim report or the draft, if we want it.
You know, the whole process may be quicker this year because a lot of the legwork will already be done by
With the
Sarah.
interim folks getting the books closed, you
Yeah.
know.
So a lot of the time-consuming things are already being done by them.
What is our deadline as far as when the audit has to be done as far as statute? Are we beyond that?
July, we usually get the letter that says you're late, so it's somewhere in July that they're due. And then they usually ask for an extension, but maybe we won't have to do that this year. Just have to see.
Okay.
I'd say a lot of the work is already laid out from, you know, things that Sarah's looked at, and the work's been left out for Carpenter and Mitchell, so it should go quicker.
I'm not sure if they've begun the grant part of it yet.
That's what I'm trying to say,
Haven't
yeah.
you yet? So that will take some time. But they maybe can work at it, go, you know, together, so.
Okay. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen of Bev? Thank you, Bev, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the detailed reporting. It's helpful to see this. Joe Vann is in Casa somewhere, Mexico.
Place nicer.
I was gonna say Casablanca.
I think it's Cancun.
Cancun, yeah.
I think that's where it is.
Yeah, well, he's somewhere, so. Sheriff, do you have anything?
We got the appropriation report.
Oh, no, you don't have that? I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry, Vicki.
It's all on the green sheet. Does anybody have any questions?
Motion to approve the probation report.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Phyllis, make sure that on next month's agenda that we do have both at the finance meeting and the board, the investment policy
Okay.
that Bev handed out tonight. I would encourage everyone to take a look at that. So, Sheriff, anything on?
Just one thing that I guess my big news, and Bev's been working on phone stuff and that, but we went to Verizon Cellular for all of our stuff down there. Our MDTs, our deputy cell phones, everything, at a significant savings. We were paying for 15 cell phones. That was costing us about $448 a month, $450 a month right in there. We've gone to 10 cell phones, and it's costing us through Verizon $105 a month.
Oh, that's great.
So it's a significant savings, and Bev's looked into it for the rest of the county, so I know some of the other department heads are looking at it, but
We're meeting tomorrow.
Verizon having the government contract, you know, US Cellular can't compete. In the process of doing all this, we found that we had 3 wireless modems that we were paying for that nobody knows where they're at, we don't know what they, so that in itself saved us almost $160 a month getting them off the bill. I started looking at recouping money for a couple of years for those and used it as a sledgehammer, if you will, when I negotiated getting out of the contract with US Cellular because they wanted cancellation fees and all that, and I said, why don't we just call it square, and that worked, so we did that. So that's my thing for, you know, I reported it to law enforcement and told them we were doing it, but I didn't have specific numbers, so that worked out to be a good thing.
Oh, that's good news, Sheriff. We appreciate that diligence.
Ted, the departments that have cell phones, the rest of them in the county, we're meeting tomorrow morning
Great.
about the same thing.
Oh, great. That's good news. So, okay, we have evening mark.
sneak in.
They won't know it. At the manor, when you come late to a meeting, you have to sing.
Wouldn't like it.
Well, we won't make you sing that. We're going to hear from Bellwether, our operations audit, and they're going to present their final report to us.
You want
And
to do the public health? You got public health on there for Bellwether.
well, I had brain farts tonight. Maybe I need to be-
The elderly.
maybe I need to be admitted to friendship matter, huh?
Just trying to keep you on track, Ted.
All right, public health. We have their annual report here. I saw Carla come in.
There she is.
Hi.
Carla, you want to give us your annual report?
No, I really wasn't prepared, I apologize, I just got the finance agenda when I walked in. Basically, this is our annual report that we supply to the Department of Public Health each year, and then we're required to report all of our grant work and our finances and those types of things. We had a really good year grant-wise, and we hope to continue. We're watching closely the budgeting and cutting process and that kind of thing, just making sure that our vital programs, we're hopeful that they are going to be maintained for the next year. So I apologize, I didn't have one report. I guess I thought we approved this at the last.
Well, I was going to.
My apologies.
Jeff brought us back to it. I was trying to give you a break.
Thanks, I appreciate that. That's okay. I just would have had more.
Carla, the question I have, it's in this nice booklet, thank you, is that we had total revenue of $876,000. Total expenses of $974. Is that a pattern you think you'll continue to see?
Those are not audited numbers because I talked with my fiscal manager, we were talking about that very issue. Our numbers reflect those numbers do not reflect the actual dollars we have received. We put accounts receivables in our numbers to gauge where we're at with our grants. So some of those revenues have not been received yet. And I apologize, we don't have audited numbers for one thing. But I don't have my numbers in front of me for 14.
So the revenue is cash received, but there could be receivables out there.
Exactly.
That would be
We're
approved.
waiting on the state to pay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it's not fair to say that you lost money because we don't have what your receivables
Correct. In fact, we did end up in black, I do believe, but I don't have that exact number in front of me.
Okay. All right, well, that's fair enough. Any questions of Carla? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I guess I'll make a motion and then.
I'll second it.
And then I'll say all in favor. Aye. So we're good to go. All right. Are we ready to go to Bellwether, Jeff? Have I gotten through everything?
You got it.
Just want to make sure, you know. All right. We will have a report from Bellwether, our operations consultants that we engaged a few months back, and they're going to come and give us their final report, and then we're going to discuss some transition issues with Bellwether. Gentlemen?
Sure.
The floor is all yours.
Can I borrow Lori's chair for a little bit and come up?
Sure, I don't have any problem with that.
Actually, Bruce, you want to sit up here?
Yeah, you know what, Bruce, why don't you do that? You're better up there. I don't see you.
Let's go see the power.
That's good for you.
Better target up there.
That's right. I know how everybody was looking forward to me reading the 41 or 42 pages verbatim. So what you should have found in your packet is a summary presentation, and I will speak to it as is my style, not to read it to you. I want to start with just resetting what the expectation of an operations review is. A lot of people see the financial numbers and they begin to equate an operations review as a financial review. And that's actually just a very small part of it. So I want to recap what we've done with the departments over the last several weeks. So it really is a matter of understanding each department's clarity on what their function and purpose is for the county. So some of it is very clearly statute-driven, others are customary and traditional services that are provided by the department. The next thing we look for is that department's ability to exert control over their resources. So we look at the ability for them to tell us about their people, tell us about their facilities, tell us about their vehicles, and it's really a two-part of that. We're looking for reports, but we're also looking for the department to actually demonstrate their ability to control the resources under their charge. The next thing we look for are really artifacts of that, so reporting and data that's provided to the county board, which we see as their conduit to the citizens of Mercer County. So the departments are accountable to the citizens through the board. And then the last two are things that you've seen this evening already that need and will continue to be ingrained into the department. And those are the continuous improvement kind of mindset. So the things like not paying for a safe when you don't need it, and the things for negotiating cell phones are all part of continuous improvement mindset that shouldn't be a sporadic event. It should be part of every department's daily operation of how do I perform the services I'm required to perform at the least expense to the citizens while providing the best of the services that we can. The last part kind of encompasses that, and that's really the stewardship of the county resources and the stewardship of those employees that are in your charge. And those things all make up the operations review. So we'll talk a lot about numbers, but I want you to understand that inside of the report, inside of our discussions with the departments, all of those things have been part of that. So I'm looking at the horizontal one, right? So the one with all the colorful art, which would have been projected had I not left the projector in Bloomington. On the first page, there are about $270,000 worth of direct savings or enhanced revenues that we feel like are an immediate capture by some management changes and some options that are inside the more detailed report. Of that 270, there's probably 85% or so that we have a pretty high confidence of your ability to capture. The other 15% are usually those things that require either an investment in order to get a capture or the right timing in order to get the capture. So of that 270, we like the number 270, but we really think it's 85% confidence factor on that. The 155,000 in the next bullet really represent the opportunities, but they're much more complex decisions and options, and those are the kind of things like we're going to talk about some phone and technology options. These are not easy revenues to capture and will require other decisions. We've been in every department. We have talked with every department head, and we have not found, and I think you'll see the benchmarks with your peer counties, we have not found an easy single answer solution to the financial challenges. There is not a pot of money hiding anywhere that we can find. There are, however, and I'm going to speak to them, a lot of management and strategy and planning and tactical changes that we're going to address that we think will just improve the overall financial stability of the county, and then some strategies to get stronger over the next few years. So I would love to have said, and occasionally we can with our client, there it is, pick it up, and you're great. I'm afraid to say that Mercer County has a path yet to take and a number of decisions to make to get there. Page 2 really recaps the fee changes that you've made and those that are on your agenda tonight. Inside of the documents we reviewed at the last meeting, we had rationalized those to the remainder of this year. These numbers represent a full fiscal year, but these are annual dollars and they'll continue year over year. The allocation of $194, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it begins the philosophy of the county behaving as a shared service. So there are things that individual departments can do for everyone so that everyone doesn't have to do it, and then they share those costs. So although it's a small number, it's actually a significant step towards an improved efficiency in the county. So very early on, there was a lot of questions, and this is page 4 now. How do we compare to others? Finding apples to apples on inside of counties in Illinois is pretty easy at the high level, and then when you get down to the department level, it can be a little bit different. So what I want to do is to encourage you to look at the relative positions and not the solid numbers, and I'll give you examples later on. We chose as peer counties Mason, Carroll, DeWitt, Piatt, and Edgar. These have comparable populations, they have comparable land area. They provide essentially the same service, although some of them, and this is kind of my examples, some of them have shared health departments, some of them have shared engineering, some of them have shared jails. There's a lot of relationship among these counties. So at the highest level, they're comparable. At the lowest level, you have to give it another level. So that's the peer group. Now, several of these are our clients already, and I can tell you, just having worked with you now and having worked with them, I know that they would probably welcome opportunities to do, face-to-face and try to learn from each other. Everybody does something well. The goal is to try and share that with others. So page 5 is kind of the county-wide observations. There's a lot more detail and in the written report. So I'm going to touch on these at a higher level, but I want to make sure that we have a good level of understanding. Financial oversight, we're amazed at the level of effort that the county and the staff exert towards managing the budget. And the reason I say that is that there's just not a lot of solid historic data to reflect on as you're trying to build financial reports and financial data. Now you're making leaps and bounds in the steps that you're taking now. So going forward, you have a lot more opportunity than you would have had you not made the recent investments in a new treasury and reporting system and had not changed the charge of accounts. There's still a lot of activity to be done, and it's really about a quadrant of those 4 points. Budgeting is not a one and done process. There really needs to be an intricate reporting process that allows literally circumstances inside of the departments to change and percolate up through their relative committees to the board, and then have the board have the ability to take some action on that. So that budgeting and reporting process, in our opinion, it needs to be a lot more solid, and we have looked at a lot of your reports. It's kind of the ones that Bev passed out tonight are directionally the way that you need to go, but we're going to look forward to a lot more context in it so that you can, again, get back to what we talked about earlier of what control do you have in order to influence the reports. The other two are about mid-year adjustments, and there are a lot of counties that have defined budget policies that allow them to make mid-course corrections. Otherwise, budgets can become a suicide pact of, this is what I thought would happen last year. And that doesn't happen real well for most of us. So the ability to make a judgment, but what's important is to define that in your, and it just appears that sharing those resources across all facilities would benefit the county overall. I know you have some openings right now that you may be able to leverage in another direction if you can find a way to cover all the responsibilities. Vehicle maintenance and fuel, we've had conversations, we've done a little bit of exploration. Each department fuels and maintains their vehicles separately. Inside of some departments, the individuals with the cars make their own decisions about fueling and maintaining their cars. So this will be a program that binds all of those cars together and negotiates a decreased rate for maintenance and tires and fuel as much as possible. The last one, and we are actually learning about information technology and phone even this afternoon. In a meeting the other day, we had drawn the conclusion, because on the national list of fiber optic paths, there is such a thing, you didn't show any in Mercer County. And in a phone call the other day, and Mark said he had it, and then while we were driving away, we started seeing the little white post, and Matt actually got out and walked across the ditch and looked at the label, and now we've talked to a couple of people. So, you know, the ability for you to get some improved technology on one hand, but we're aware of companies that will, at no cost to the county, potentially replace your phone system, which I know is a large capital expense that you see on the horizon, and actually save you year over year on the equipment. So it's both an immediate savings on the capital investment and a savings on the equipment overall. Post-retirement benefits, a big part of operations management is predictability. So on your post-retirements, you're managing them out of annual payments right now, and when we put that together with the low reserve funds in other funds, it makes cash management really tough for the county. So what we've done is, in the packet that you have, and I'll speak to it briefly in a couple of minutes, there are some programs that allow counties to meet the full government requirement for post-retirement benefits and do it by leveraging other programs just to relieve that cash off the county. And then fund balances. So this was the last special meeting we talked about fund balances. Going forward, each levy, as you know, some are capped, some are not. Over the years, it appears that funding for different programs, departments, have migrated, if you will, from funds to another fund in order to find money during lean times. Very common practice among your peer counties. What we're going to recommend is a reset, or what we are recommending is a reset of those funds across a couple of year plan to get back into, for instance, the facilities, into the Public Building Commission and the out of the general fund. And it'll allow you to move funds around, and it looks like that you can do this with little or no impact in the near term to the aggregate fund value. But it's really too early to say that absolutely. It's really, right now you've got a lot of funds that add up. We may just want to change how individually they're built up. Okay, so now we're going to get to department by department, and these speak to opportunities or decisions. These are not the only decision. These are not the only options. They really just kind of are a picture of the county where it is today. Animal control is one of those departments that, as you get closer to the counties, you begin to see differences. Now, the chart is really simple, that you can see that per household and overall, Mercer County pays more for animal control than your peer counties. But we can tell you that in many of those counties, they don't have a dedicated animal control department. It's integrated with other departments, and that allows them to leverage resources back and forth. Animal control officers do functions inside of their host department. The host department, and in one example, we have a county that where a deputy actually picks up stray dogs and takes them to the county pound. So the comparison in this instance, in this peer group, you're the only one that we know of that has a standalone animal control. What we feel like, and this is the next page over, what we feel like is that if you took the example from your peer and consolidated in and looked at the labor across the span, that it may create some options for you. You may be able to multitask excess capacity in animal control. You may be able to cross-train into other functions. You may be able to leverage labor to current shortfalls. There's a lot of options in here, but I believe that a standalone department of 2 people limits your options. And for that reason, we've recommended consolidating it with another department. Now, we've put into this document, the Sheriff's Department, we've seen it merged with Health Department and Sheriff's Department, probably more so the Sheriff's Department than Health, because the Sheriff's Department already has a reporting mechanism and a dispatch mechanism, and they're used to people being out on the road doing stuff. So we see more of that example than not. So I'll tell you that a lot of the departments are going to page 8 are going to be like page 8, supervisor of assessment. I don't know if you're surprised or not that in most departments your aggregate cost of operation are lower than your peer counties. So now remember, these are peer counties who have essentially the same appropriation base. Some are doing better, and I'll show you this later, in sales and business revenue, but they're pretty comparable counties. So department by department going forward, you generally are at a lower cost than your peers. And that's not to say that that's your resting point. That's just to say that putting pressure down onto the numbers won't drive the behavior that you want. What you want to reinforce is kind of where I started. Department by department, committee by committee, what are you accountable for? How are you doing relative to how you should do? What can you do to do better or save expense? What do you need for help? And those kinds of dialogues with these departments are going to get you a significant leap forward. And if you look at the supervisor of assessment as an example, heavy pressure downward on, say, a 10% reduction in operating costs is not a significant amount to the department or to the county overall. So your improvements need to have a wider vision. I'll touch briefly on the following departments. Please stop me if you have a question, and remember the hearing deficit, so if you have to throw something, hit Brian with it and he'll let me know. State's attorney, the state's attorney department in a small county is pretty much what it takes to handle the caseload in a small county. So the variation is a little bit, I think by the chart, you're just slightly higher. This can be driven by so many other factors that would change 5 or 10% in that amount. It can be caseload, it can be the aggregate age or the seniority of the staff. But if you look at the across the board, you're not significantly different than your peers. We didn't see a lot of opportunity in the state's attorney's department. We did talk to both the circuit clerk, the state's attorney, and the sheriff about the amount of internally driven churn. So when you are doing debt collection for the county and you issue a summons for somebody and then you have the sheriff pick them up, and that adds cost to the sheriff's department, and you have the circuit clerk process them and the court process them and the state's attorney process them, that churn adds expense to those departments. So a selective process on that actually will decrease kind of your internal driven expense. Okay, county clerk. I want to tell you that we spend a lot of time with county clerks and recorders. So we're very confident in the comparison numbers here. Your county clerk is efficient, makes the most out of the available staff, does what is typical in small counties that don't have administrators, accounts payable, benefits, risk management, contract. It's pretty much the catch place for most everything that doesn't have a natural home. So inside of all of these bars is kind of that reality. Some counties are a little better. Some counties have like designated uber clerical people in the clerk's office that does all of the accounts payable or all of the payroll or something like that. And those costs are held out separately from the cost for the clerk and recorder. So it's important to keep in mind that the clerk and recorder's costs for activity are actually covered under the statute fees. So all of the activity related to being a clerk, minus elections, and all of the activity related to being a recorder are accounted for. But just to be clear, on page 11, if you look at the comparative data on the clerk recorder functions alone, and then the election functions, I don't know that you could get a less expensive election unless you just had everybody show up in the courtyard and raise their hand for a vote. This is an incredibly efficient electoral process here. And what's tough is that there are some state statutes that are driving down through larger counties that may add cost. So you're kind of in a pretty good spot now, but you need to be mindful of capital investments in the election process and the ability to react. So circuit clerk, and the thing that we'll say about circuit clerk, I mentioned them about the churn, is that your circuit clerk is in agreement with the court, provides a lot of staff during the courtroom operations. That's about 50-50 in circuit clerks, depending on the court and the judge's preferences. I don't think that you can look at the numbers on comparing them to their peers. It's still a radically inexpensive department compared to peers. And your circuit clerk has become the de facto IT shop also. He seems to be the guy that people talk to about technology for the county. And that's kind of all wrapped into this capacity as well. There are a handful of things in there about the debt collection process, and all the departments really got some kind of an encouragement for that continuous improvement that we talked about. Health department, so you should be remarkably proud of your facility and the services that you provide and the expense base that they represent for the county. So health departments typically run off of levied funds and grants. And if you look at that mix across all the counties, I mean, you just got a good solid mixture there. We spend a lot of time talking with the staff. They expand and contract relative to programs that are funded by grants as is appropriate. They have a good view of where to invest money for the county citizens' well-being, and then there are programs. The environmental health program is compliant and is a one-person shop, which is just phenomenal for the amount of land area that you've got. So it's something that I think Carla should be touting with her peers. Highway department, and I just want to touch on it very briefly. Due to funds and really the condition that the county is in, your highway department has really evolved to just a maintenance-only department. The funding is really too low for any large capital investments. You really don't have the resources to do matching funds for grants. There are a few grants that are probably out there that you could pursue. There aren't any really great grant writers except for in Carla's shop, and we've been talking about how can she lend that skill to other departments. So I think when you look at the cost per capita and the cost on the highway department overall, that is probably a reflection of decreased available revenue and what they're providing rather than an act of efficiency. That's all they've got to spend, that's all they can spend. Probation and court services, they are what they are, they do what they do. You've got another department here that when you compare it to the peer counties, certainly they are efficient, the caseload is appropriate, the staff numbers are appropriate. It appears to be a well-run department. There are a handful of things across all departments. Probation has got a couple of cars that we'd like to get into the mix on the leverage maintenance, some technology combination with other departments. But overall, it's a pretty tight little shop that just kind of motors along. The sheriff has 3 pages because he takes more to talk about sheriff. So sheriff's department vary among your peers significantly. So Edgar County, which if you flip back and look at the landmass for Edgar County, has a higher population densities in incorporated cities, and so they have fewer deputies, they have a smaller jail, they have less overall expense, but a big part of that is that Paris, although it's not a metropolitan skyscraper, it's 10,000 people and occupies a significant portion of Edgar County and therefore has its own police force. And because of the arrangements, the home rule, they reach out into even the unincorporated areas a little bit. And I really want to point out for both, again, Bev and the Sheriff, on the spirit of continuous improvement on finding. $250 didn't sound like a lot. If every department tried to find something like that every month, that's a significant contribution to the county. Vehicles were a question outside of the department that we were asked. We did look at usage rate, we looked at mileage rate, we looked at the maintenance cost for vehicles. And I think in prior discussions we've talked about the life expectancies. In the report it gives you more detailed information on that. There was a question about, well, could we have fewer cars? Where you're putting about 30,000 miles on a car now, on 12 cars, and if you reduce the number of cars, those miles got to go somewhere because they're patrolling. And if you get, you'll get to the point where your maintenance cost, because you're putting too many miles on the car, will just outpace any benefit of having the higher number of cars. Take-home cars are very common among counties your size. Of all of the counties in the peer group, all of them had them. Now I should say that some of the special roles inside of the department, like investigators and administrators, didn't have patrol. Looking downrange a bit, at the current usage rate, you'll have a fair number of cars that are going to exceed their life expectancy. You can continue to do maintenance on them and keep them rolling, but you can only avoid for so long, and so that's got to be planned for. There were also several questions about the jail. We looked at the jail from a peer perspective, and I wanted to point out that Mercer, Mason, and DeWitt all have contracts with the U.S. Marshals. In the report, it gives you their target population. From what I understand, none of them are at target population, but they all seem to be about at the same percentages. Across the group, about 80% of the total operating costs are paid for the jail are paid through third-party fees, either other counties or federal organizations like that. So the arrangement that we found inside of the Mercer County Jail is very typical. The expense base was comparable to other counties having the same programs. There was some question about whether or not the jail paid, does it take in more than it costs, or does it make money? How you ask that question changed so much. Here's what we want to point out, and this is on page 19. Mercer, we looked at the number of inmate days by source. So those coming from Mercer County, those coming from the Marshal Service, those coming from Cook County. Mercer County inmate days make up 23% of the capacity of the jail, but when you look at the aggregate expense, that's the total expense less the amount paid in third-party fees, Mercer County pays about 9% of the jail's overall operating costs. So you're occupying about a quarter of it, you're paying for about 10% of it. So even though you're still paying in there, you're getting a good deal. Well, the question then was asked, well, is this cheaper than the old jail? So we took the operating cost of the old jail, we applied a municipal cost of living index to that, plus a maintenance projection, and it's actually pretty close to about what your annual cost would be, within $30,000 if you just still had the old jail. So in our opinion, the jail operates well, it's staffed appropriately, and raises the appropriate amount of funds to third party to cover the expense. Treasurer Department, again, by peer group, remarkably lower. Two very hardworking people. Not that everybody isn't hardworking, but what we can look downstream and see is that when tax payments start coming in, two people in the Treasury's office are going to be very, very busy, and you're going to have to anticipate that in one form or another. The post-retirement health costs, if you'll allow me, I'd like to come back to that, because I'd like to just end on that. I want to just touch on the economic development and comparison on your peers. So page 22, if you will, and I'll be brief and nearly finished. Two sides of the coin for Mercer County. So you have an operating expense that is fairly fixed. There are some expense savings that are available to the county. There always will be. But you have a diminishing revenue side from a diminishing population and diminishing employment inside of the county. So when you look at the peer counties, and the category is private non-farm employers, and you can see that you are significantly lower at 276 than the peer group across the spread. So what does that mean? That means that it's harder to get more people in here to live in Mercer County because you need more jobs. Duh. Okay, that wasn't very insightful. The next part, though, is kind of a secondary impact of living near large neighbors. So if you look at the county consumer sales tax among your peers, and I don't think this is going to take anybody by surprise that major shopping trips go to the Quad Cities and to Rock Island to outside of Mercer County. So your share, your distribution on county consumer sales tax is lower than your peer group. So however much you invest in the operations excellence going forward, you need to double down on the economic development for the county, because one side will not change the dynamic for Mercer County. Page 23 is just kind of the near-term transaction items. This is not the comprehensive list. These are the things that we feel like should be focused on very quickly. The animal control restructuring, I think, the sooner that you get the groups together, the sooner you can start leveraging some synergy. Explore multiple centralized contracts for common departments. That's savings right away. Every day we don't negotiate for fuel and maintenance is the day that we're going to pay probably more than we need to. Support for department actions as part of it. So every department has something to do. This is committee work. So the committees need to be asking each department on a regular basis of what are you working on, how are you progressing, what are you gaining, and we should be hearing more and more of these kinds of stories about phone and safety. The next one is a little bit more aggressive, and that is to rationalize the remainder of this fiscal year. So what we mean by that is each committee, in cooperation with the departments and the elected officials, defining what the statutory requirements are from that department and identifying which non-statutory services they're providing, and then rationalizing on those non-statutories to decide what can we afford to do. I'm not advocating any individual service being extracted. What I'm advocating is you should be aware of that. You should know exactly what your statutory costs should be and what your additional services should be. Once you've done that, then working with the departments to estimate their expenses for the remaining year, and then any funds that you find in excess, scrape them off to a reserve fund for this year. A great problem for the county is not having an unencumbered fund balance, which causes you to go to a costly short-term loan to fund near-term needs. So to escape that, let's find out exactly what the departments need to make it through the remainder of the year, and then pull into a reserve fund to take it through the rest of the year. Not surprisingly, the budget process is coming. We recommend a total revamp of the county's strategic planning, budget policy, budget process, committee involvement in budget. It's a revamp the entire thing. Now, the last thing, and I'll take you back then quickly to page 21, is about the post-retirement health care. And actually, Matt, can I ask you to do a quick minute on these programs?
Yeah. So I think Bruce mentioned it before, and I know many of you know this to be true because it shows up in your annual audit every year, your outside audit, that the county, Mercer County does have what they call OPEBs, which are their financial obligations for post-retirement benefits for past employees or employees as they retire. That liability actuarially grows and grows and grows. And the Government Accounting Standards Board, I don't know, Bev, do you remember, 1994 or something like that, actually laid out a guideline for local governments where they have to start reflecting it in financial reports. That guideline from Gatsby was updated again in 2004, 2005, to actually direct lenders, bonding organizations, and local governments to actually define a plan for how to appropriately fund post-retirement health care costs or post-retirement benefit costs. You have that plan. It gets done periodically by your outside auditors. It's included in your outside audit, at least along with the last year's that we were able to review. But like a lot of local governments, they don't have a big bucket of money to just sit over there and say, here, this is to fund our post-retirement obligations. Mercer County instead muscles through it by paying post-retirement healthcare costs as they occur. So you're doing it out of cash flow. As the group of people who are currently in that program continue to get older, and as more employees, and over time employees will retire and they'll go into that fund, and it's not unlike your current self-funded health care plan for regular employees. You have stop loss coverage associated with that kind of maxes the annual cost to the county in terms of that plan. Post-retirement health care benefits has no such thing. So you could literally get nailed and it could hurt very bad. So we work with a couple firms. There are several strategies out there. I think actually it was in the resolution of fiscal emergency last month to ask either the insurance company or the insurance committee or the finance committee to evaluate potential solutions for structuring and funding your post-retirement obligations. Like I said, there are good, solid ways to do that actually are being used in private industry for decades now that we ought to bring here and talk about. So this is a description of one of them that we've seen used elsewhere.
So that was fast and a lot.
Bruce, one question I have, on the jail, and I'll just be brief, is that what I think you said was that having done the expansion has kept us about at the same level had we not done the expansion as far as...
Within about $30,000.
$30,000 better or 30,000 worse?
Yeah, so I think the current jail, if we took the past payment and extrapolated up, your current cost in the jail, given your current population, is within 30,000 higher than the old jail was. Now, it'll only take a handful of people from the Marshall or from Cook County to change that mix. And
Okay, well, that was because, you know, we've had big debates, and I don't want to debate it any longer, because I think we've debated it long enough. But, you know, we're just about where we were, maybe a little less, so I think that challenges me to challenge our sheriff. What can we do to increase those outside prisoners? I know the sheriff's working hard to do that, to get more, you know, U.S. Marshal or more Cook County. So that was the one question I had. Thank you.
there are a lot of counties who house other counties, other small county inmates as well. So there's opportunities in there. It just
Sheriff, do we actually have a contract with Marshal Service?
The contract with the Marshal Service is a contract based on the rate that they pay us.
Oh, okay.
Not based on a certain number of inmates per month, but we're contracted to what we charge them.
Okay.
So it's a yes and no question, both at the same time.
Any questions, Bruce?
I've got one. I mean, Bruce talked briefly. In your idea, could we, does any of the other peer group counties have a county administrator full time?
no, they do not have a full-time.
What reasonable cost could we expect to support in our budget to support part-time? We probably can't support a full-time administrator, can we? But could we support a part-time administrator?
I don't exactly know how to answer that question, because right now you've got a long list of things that need to be taken care of. So right now you've got more work than any of your current staff could do. But I don't know that that continues in out years.
Once we get things rolling.
Right.
So this is something we could possibly contract out.
Well, and I'm not trying to be evasive, I'm just trying to.
No, I know.
So we just talked about this, what, 30 an hour ago. Inside of the current staff, there are a number of functions that are done in addition to their official duties. And it doesn't take much. You get one person who's really, and I'll use payroll as an example. You get one person who's very good at payroll, and then they retire, and you've got to start from scratch again, or something happens, you start from scratch again. Those kinds of circumstances where those basic functions are ad hoc create an environment where you can have unintended outcomes. So you can have a higher incidence of incomplete recording. You can have a higher incidence of data for budgets not being as robust as you want. I mean, there's just a lot of county administration functions that need to be done that right now in Mercer are kind of spread all over.
Or not being done.
Or not being done. And what I want to make sure is clear, though, is that everybody who's trying to do something is trying to do something to the best of their abilities. There's a reason why there are people who are really good at county administration. I think the challenge is, I don't know that your current dynamic will do you well in the long run, but I'm not exactly sure what a solution looks like for you in the long run either. I know that most of the things that we talked about on the county-wide are symptoms of not having a professional administrator. But I do see that I'm not sure, short of economic development, I'm not sure a year from now, how do I spend my day up here? But you could do, for where Mercer County is right now, you could do an awful lot of hours of economic development for an awful lot of return.
With an administrator.
Somebody.
Just anybody that generates the revenue, like somebody that writes grants, you know?
I'll tell you that grant writing is a skill that I think is innate at birth, as far as I can tell. So some people have administrators who write grants and others don't. It really is an individual skill set.
Bruce,
Sure.
you talked about sharing, like with our peer counties and things like that. Have you seen anything where we share maybe an exchange of services? Say, we've got bed space in our jail, they're having jail issues, we can house your inmates for us, for you, can you help us with county road engineering, road work type stuff?
We see it all the time. So I'll give you examples of Decatur and Macon County exchange. Decatur Police Department does all the dispatching, and Macon County does file management, I think. So they exchange services back and forth. And I think some of those are kind of the interesting discussions that could happen in the county as well of, can you make arrangements with even the city of Aledo for accounts payable or payroll or something that other people are doing also, that you can leverage a relationship with them on that. But there are a lot of counties and municipalities, even counties, right now, Polk County is a client of ours with the sheriff and one deputy and no jail. So they have a perimeter patrol relationship with the other counties where that county can't get a patrol car out everywhere, so the other counties kind of extend in. Right. So I don't know that there's a limit, given today's environment, where local governments are going to continue to be squeezed by either downward pressure from the state or changes in the economy. I don't know that there's a limit of creativity among local officials. What could we think of? I think that's where we're at.
Get out of the box.
I think so.
So, any other questions, Bruce? Thanks, Bruce.
Get down.
Come on back to the common folk here. So, what we have discussed with Bellwether, what I have discussed with Bellwether, is that we've got a really good starting point, and we're implementing a number of things. But I'm concerned that if they just walk away, that during this transition between now and the time we finally decide to hire a full-time administrator, I think there's going to be precious momentum and time lost. I think we've got some significant budget things we need to do for 2016. I think we have a comfort level with Bellwether. I think they've provided everything we asked them to provide in our interview with them and the questions and their proposal. I don't think that they have not performed as we saw. We have 270,000 in direct recommendations, 155,000 in others. And I want to keep working on those recommendations and making sure in the next 2 or 3 months we get every recommendation we can implement, everything analyzed that we need to have analyzed. So I would make a motion to take it to the full board. I believe it's $16,000 a month. Bruce, is that the number?
No, sir. It was, I would like that. We between now and the first week in June for $16,000.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I meant for that period of time from now till June 1. So between now and June 1, I would like to make a motion to continue our engagement with Bellwether for an additional $16,000 to take to the full board. I'd like to have a second on that.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. With that, we will take that to the board. Now, a couple of quick things. We have before us a resolution to take to the board on our county clerk fees. Again, this is part of the bellwether recommendation in order to increase revenues. I would like to have a motion to take this to the board.
Also move.
Another second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Regarding Mercer County animal control fees, what I would like to do at this time is table and allow the Animal Control Committee to meet to discuss the concerns that the staff has raised, and then come back with a motion.
I agree.
Do I have a motion to table this until
I'll
next
second.
month?
So make that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have before us here, let's see, where am I at here, Jeff?
Income tax cuts.
Kind of keep me online here. One of the things that Phyllis sent out that we've been reading about is the proposed income tax sharing that all counties and municipalities risk in losing if all the budget recommendations are implemented that our Governor Rauner is suggesting. In our particular case, did you guys quantify that? What that would be, Matt?
So there's a done deal in Springfield for the remainder of 2015, which looks like it's about a 4% reduction in the, what they call the local distributive fund, which is the local distributive fund of the income tax. 2016, however, is still up in the air, and that number could be as high as 50%. So the 4% for you, I think ends up being less than $6,000 or $7,000, but obviously, do the math, it could be pretty substantial
So for
next year.
15, an agreement's been made between
That deal's been
the
struck.
legislature and the governor then?
Right, yeah,
And the lobbyists?
between President Cullerton of the Senate and Representative Madigan of the House, that deal's been made.
So a resolution at this point probably isn't in order that other municipalities and counties did a few months ago to send to Springfield.
I don't know exactly, I haven't read the resolution you're talking about. I mean, I would say it is a huge risk for local governments for 2016, and obviously the General Assembly is going to start, their focus is turning to that. Governor Rauner has now done his fund sweeps to balance the 15 budget in Springfield.
So it would make sense then, as we prepare the 16 budget, to assume there's going to be cuts to that shared fund.
I think that's a pretty safe assumption.
Yeah.
How much of a cut was it this year?
About
6 grand.
4%, which ends up being, I think, $6,000 or $7,000 to you, I'm operating from memory at that.
What are you gonna estimate for cut for next year possibly?
Well, so Rauner's asking for 50%. I mean, there's obviously pushback from all over the state on that, so who knows where they really end up.
But this year's budget, we will have about 6,000 or 7,000 less in this fund. So, at any rate, I just thought we would have a talking point there as a finance committee so that we're aware that this is happening and that there's a real risk to this distributive fund being cut significantly more for 2016. We have in your packet, Monty provided to me a bill from the Mercer County Public Building Commission. I know Joe has been working on a resolution. Joe's in Cancun. I'd like to table this for a month if we could, and then deal with it in our meeting in May. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We're not saying no, Marty, we're just saying that, the guy who's in charge of this, which he should be because he's our Public Building Commission Board rep, is out of town. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next thing is that we have a letter here from Gregg regarding Mike Burleson, our former treasurer who is now in prison. It has come to our attention that based on, and Joe Vann needs to get some credit here, and when you see Joe, thank him. Joe did some research on Illinois statute, and it appears that the $50,767 that we paid him, that because he was placed on administrative leave, and he was later, convicted, that he has to repay what we paid him while he was on this leave. So what Gregg is saying is that, well, there is never a guarantee of success in court or actual repayment from someone in prison. I assume we have board approval to sue. And, since Gregg's our attorney, and it's not gonna cost us any more for Gregg to, sue him, because it's part of Gregg's time, I recommend that we sue him and to try to recover this money. Now, the other question is, no, that's not another question, that's totally separate on our bonding. So, do I have a motion to direct our state's attorney to sue Mr. Brooks?
Wait a minute.
Look at the back of this, and then, what's the chance of getting any money out of this guy? I'd say 0 to none.
Yeah,
Okay. All right,
I agree.
Yeah, to the point of order though, this isn't on our agenda.
right,
so
I
we can't-
just made that. I thought it was in our packet, so
To be possibly brought up in the next meeting.
let's do that. Let's bring it up in the May meeting so that it's properly on our agenda. But anyway, we have information now
Yeah.
that says that.
And he's not gonna be out till 16. At the earliest, so. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a question that,
Yeah, exactly.
nothing ventured, nothing gained, the
No.
way I see it.
You're right.
At least it says, hey, look, we're serious about recovering money
Yeah.
that we paid while he was on this leave, and he was later charged,
Mhm.
and not charged with conviction.
Right.
So,
You wanna do the claims too?
thanks, Jeff. You want to run the meeting?
No, but I mean, you jumped over this one and I got, okay.
Well, it was in our packet here, so I figured it was on the agenda, so.
Well,
All right, we have our claims, and they are. Now, where are our claims here?
Well, on my report,
Very back.
Right here in this package right here. In there, and that's, so clear.
Okay. Motion to pay our claims for March of $377,712.
also move.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any other business or non-action items? I guess that's probably where I should have covered the first week, so my apologies. Any other non-action items to come before the board? Finance committee.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just to make sure that the Tri-County agreement gets on the agenda for action at the next meeting of Finance Day.
Okay. We'll make sure
It's
that.
on the full.
Oh, it's on the
Tonight?
full, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sorry, I thought it had to come through committee first.
You thought you were gonna get out of it,
Well,
right?
you can tell, for other business, he has presented us with a technical assistance agreement that he would like to have on the full board agenda for next month.
Okay.
So, if
I'll go
anybody wants
with
to see that, I am not.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's fine.
I'll be happy to speak for the full board.
I'm so confused, we probably should prove it, I wouldn't know any better. So. All right, motion to, I'm sorry, public comment? Ms. Schatz, we have 3 minutes, it needs to be related to the agenda.
Okay, the bellwether report was very informative, but one thing that I am kind of curious about, it seems like this was a short-term proposition, and I'm just wondering, looking even as far down as 5 years down the road, I realize there'll probably be some people that will retire and some things like that, but in general, your expenses through your employees, health insurance, things like that, are going to continually increase. I mean, historically, if you look at our county, it has increased 10 to 12% a year, and those are all additional expenses that are going to incur, and I'm just wondering if that was factored in. I didn't hear it, but I was just wondering if it was factored into this report at all, looking down the road at 2017, 2018, such like that.
Jason, this is and let me speak to that if I'm wrong. gentleman correctly, but this is a snapshot of where we are today. We did not ask for a pro forma projection for multi-years out. So that is your question. Is that a correct answer?
Yeah, so we looked at that as a factor of another bigger question. We took your historic earned assessed value, your trend in employment and population, and the impact of salaries and healthcare costs, and put all those numbers together into a forecast that really is a challenging picture for the county, but why we keep saying double down on economic development.
Any other questions?
How are we doing in relation to, how are the peer counties doing financially? And that you keep talking about all these peer counties, how are they doing financially?
Of the group,
Their budgets.
Of the group, there are a couple who have, if you will, cash cows. DeWitt County has a big power plant. Piatt County is a bedroom community for Champaign-Urbana. So those two they're still struggling, but they at least have a little bit of a life preserver. Mm-hmm. The others are in the same challenge that you are.
Yeah.
I think I'll add just a little bit. One of our last recommendations in the document really got to more intentional overall fund management strategies, and I'll give you a perspective. Mercer County does have fund balances across the entire set of 30-some plus funds. But part of the challenge that the county is facing today is it's got those dollars in the wrong buckets at the wrong time, which makes cash flowing operations a challenge sometimes. So there is an element of this which is just intentionally over, and Bruce mentioned it before, over a period of 2 or 3 years, using a thinking more deliberately about your overall levy strategy and your overall fund management strategy to kind of get those buckets of money. In local governments, it's all fund management. It's not just it's not like a household budget in that you have to treat it, you have to manage it a little bit differently. But getting those dollars positioned more accurately and correctly. So I think to speak to your peers, a lot of those counties have done maybe a better job than Mercer County has of keeping the right kinds of dollars in the right buckets. And so they don't have all of the same cash flow issues that Mercer County has.
And you gentlemen remember when we interviewed you, that was one of our questions, is take a look at how we do our funds and give us your thoughts. So, I'm glad to know that we're looking at that and going to be making these adjustments so that we can repurpose funds and add to funds and get a better management of our overall funds. And that was one of the fundamental rules I had as finance committee chairman, because I don't understand county finance. I understand healthcare finance, not county finance. So
and I appreciate. Let's be real careful. It feels like it all. Just as a casual onlooker looking at the fund balances across the county, it feels like, how hard can this be? You pick up $30,000 out of that bucket and you put it over in this bucket and you're good. Well, it's under Illinois state law, it doesn't work that way. I mean, if you levy dollars to be used for IMRF payments, or if you levy dollars into your tort liability fund, there are very defined rules around what those dollars can be used for at that point. So what it takes is it takes multiple years of intentionally, and I understand the board's goal, and every county board's goal ought to be, hold the line on property taxes as much as you possibly can. So it takes multiple years of intentionally saying, I'm going to lower the levy on this one to intentionally spend down that fund balance on the things that fund balance is supposed to be spent on, so I can increase the levy in the general fund and start to build a general fund again.
And that's the budgetary expertise these gentlemen bring to us as we move forward. So, any other public comment? Lori? Yes, Lori?
Does your company address the how the property taxes, how Mercer County property taxes compare with our peer counties?
At a macro level,
How do they compare?
Well, it's your combination, so the county's earned assessed value is a combination of several different types of properties. So we looked at farm property and commercial property and residential property and with, across the peer group, with the exception of 2 of them that were very heavy residential because they were close to Champaign-Urbana. The rest were pretty comparable.
Yeah, you're in the ball, I mean, almost all counties in Illinois are nearly maxed out at all of their, you know, uncapped levies, or all their capped levy rates, and Mercer County is no different. As Bruce was saying, there are a couple of those peers that were in the mix that haven't seen the same, so there's a difference between levy rate and levy collected. So DeWitt County is a classic example. They own a big nuclear power plant there. And even though it's been devalued twice for tax purposes, it's still a cash cow.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That's your answer.
Did that answer your question, Lori? We're pretty much maxed out, like everybody else, so. Any other questions?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
I'm assuming an hour and a half meeting.